Hello again, Michael.
Hello.
How's it
Been
going?
too long. How's it going? It's going great. It's always going great.
Are you
I'm in the
back in your
70s
childhood
room.
room there? What's going
No,
on with that
I'm in my
that setup?
70s room.
Oh, it's the 70s room.
It's the 70s room where all the magic happens.
Yes, everything in there from the 1970s.
Uh, yes, except for any of my girlfriends. Just saying.
I know I didn't have girlfriends in the 70s. I'm not that old.
Well, I just turned 42, so I was on the cusp. I think of the 70s. Missed out on
Yeah,
a lot. I'm sure. I'm sure.
yeah. Well, we're not talking about the 70s today. We're going to be talking more about the 80s. And as we promised, we are going to be discussing gaming related topics, and I thought it would be fun to basically kind of start with basic D&D, right? We're going to kind of get into some material that has to do with like the BECMI sets, right? That's basic, expert, companion, master, immortal, and maybe later on the rules cyclopedia. But specifically, what I want to talk about today is some things we've been working on that have to do with desert adventures and tie into the Gazetteers that came out in the late 80s. So specifically this guy here, the Emirates of Ylaruam by
Oh,
Ken
hubba
Wells.
hubba. Look, there's women that look like women.
Yeah,
It must be the
it's a
80s.
great cover. Yeah, it's really cool. So most of our audience will be familiar with the Gazetteers, right? This is the second one that came out in the series. There were a lot of others. There was like the Shadow Elves and I think the Principalities of Galantry, Carmicos, and Thyatus and Alphatia, which I'm going to talk about probably in a couple episodes because I got something cooking there too. But these were, as a lot of people know, these were these supplements that basically came out in the late 80s, and they were to basically kind of tie into the Dungeons and Dragons BECMI set, right? The basic expert companion, master immortal rule system. Now, for this one here, right, the Emirates, basically what we have here is a not just a setting, but we also have some new rules, new items, character classes, and things that can be basically inserted into your games to kind of spice them up and to you know uh, make it a fun world to play in.
Right. Well, I have
So
a question, Colin,
sure.
real quick.
Mhm.
So with were AD&D and Basic running at the same time? Is that correct?
They were, yeah. I mean, they were from really the get go, right? Because Basic came first, right? And it was 1974, and then Advanced D&D got introduced in 77, 78, around there with the main books, the Dungeon Master's Guide, Monster Manual,
So
and
they're
but
go ahead.
but
No, so they're running both at the same time. I wonder how the sales were on those as far as were they both as popular? I know AD&D finally, just took over completely, but how was that working out for them? Because they would be writing two basically separate gaming systems.
yeah. So from my understanding, the basic set was supposed to, or at least I think, according to Gary and others, to serve as a kind of an introduction or a gateway to the advanced game, right? For first edition, and then of course second edition later on. But they kept up, right, with the basic game for years and years until it was kind of abandoned around, I'm going to say 94, when they stopped producing material for the basic game.
Okay.
But there's some interesting things about the basic game, and I'm not going to get too much into them today because it's a huge topic, and that would be for another time. But what made BECMI D&D different, or basic D&D different, or a couple things. Number one, there were things that you could do in the game where, with character advancement, you could get to the point where you would basically have a stronghold or a domain or even a country to manage. So there were rules for that. So there was a clear, logical progression of play where you went from kind of the low-level dungeon delver guy fighting rats in the cellar to somebody who could be a prince or a king or even an emperor, right? Or even a god, right? Because there were immortal rules, right, in the basic game.
Right.
In addition to that, they also had a mass battle system called the War Machine, which I'll talk about in a later episode. But it was basically kind of this formula-based mathematical system where you could muster up troops and pit large armies against each other and see what the results were. So you could have countries or principalities fighting each other and see what happens. And then they expanded this further into something called the Sea Machine, which appeared, I believe, for the first time in Dungeon Module M1 into the Maelstrom, where it extended it into naval combat.
Okay, I was going to say, yeah, full on high seas adventures and all that fun stuff.
Right. So this kind of gets into the whole issue is, again, what's different about this system? Well, AD&D didn't really have that. Now, AD&D was a more complex system in the sense that, there are more character statistics and, it was, rule set was more complicated, but it didn't have that progression. It didn't have those domain management, mass battle, naval battle capabilities. That's why I kind of prefer basic. I love the ability to actually get involved in that kind of stuff, and to add that into my game. But the other thing that the basic game came up with, or TSR came up with, and all these authors, are these gazetteers. And these gazetteers are, what they do is they focus on one area of the known world, which is the continent of Mystara, and flesh out the setting, right? So you have this, you introduced to new rulers and character classes and cities and all this kind of stuff, right? And the thing that made them a little bit different is that a lot of these places have some sort of real world analogy to them.
All right.
So, for instance, Thyatis is basically like the Byzantine Empire, right? It kind of looks like Constantinople in the 14th century or whatever. It's got that Roman kind of feel to it: the Colosseum, Hippodrome, war galleys, gladiators, all that kind of stuff, right?
Sure.
And like Karameikos or somewhere like that is more like high medieval, let's say Central European kind of, Germanic or French feel to it. But the one that we're going to talk about today, finally, I'm getting back to it, this gazetteer, which is the Emirates of Ylaruam. This one is basically gives us a Middle Eastern kind of Arabian or even Persian flavor to the game. And it introduces this new setting where our players can go into. And the cool thing about this is it's kind of an alien world. You're coming from, let's say, a high medieval kind of almost European feel, and you're getting into these kind of almost Arabian lands where you are essentially an outsider. And the reason for that is that on page 14 of this gazetteer, which I'll flip to really quick here. Hopefully it's not. Oh, maybe it's. Oh, here it is. 15 actually. Al-Kalim. And Al-Kalim is kind of this prophet figure who is connected to the one true God kind of thing, right? And there's the religion of the Emirates kind of revolves around the way of Khalim. And if you're coming into this and you're an outsider, it can be difficult, right? Because you have the disadvantage of being an unbeliever, right? You're kind of an infidel coming into this,
Sure.
and there are not necessarily rules, but there are suggestions in the Gazetteer for penalizing characters or presenting a challenge to characters based on the fact that they may be unbelievers. Now, there's nothing stopping you from just playing a character who actually already believes this stuff and already lives there, right? So you won't have those disadvantages. But this could be an interesting thing for the players to have to overcome.
Sure.
In addition to that, there are also, let's see what page they're on. There's like, let's see, page 18 I have here. It might be a little further in. There are some new spells that the Gazetteer introduces. There's things like find water or detect water, which would be critical if you're in the middle of this Sind desert, which is this gigantic barren waste of a desert, which is very difficult to cross and to navigate. There's another spell called Know Destiny, which is kind of an interesting one, where you can kind of figure out what's in store for you. And in addition to this, there are on a little bit later in this system here, they talk about things like heat exhaustion and water checks, or riding checks in these kind of rocky deserts.
Oh, I thought that said riding chicks. I need some glasses because that'd be an interesting spell for me.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Pretty sure TSR wasn't that R-rated back in the day, but
I don't know the way they talk about them now. That these guys were just like like crazed perverts, and trust me, I would know.
That's right. But so some of these rules are interesting, and I think as a DM, right, if you're going to play this setting, you really want to challenge the players, not merely with the whole thing with Al-Khalim and being an outsider and being a cultural outsider, but you also want to challenge them in the terrain. Crossing the desert is dangerous, right? You could end up dying. So it's a fun twist, and it adds an element of realism. Now, in addition to the Gazetteer, which actually came after these modules, there were a couple modules that were released back in the day that are quite famous and really considered some of the best modules that were ever produced for the basic game, or really any Dungeons & Dragons game. And one we have here is for the expert set called Master of the Desert Nomads, right, by David Cook. And this one is really the first time we really see this setting in the D&D world. Is before the Gazetteer actually came out, and it opens up the scenario in a small village on the border of the Republic of Darrakan. And the parties answered a call to defend the Republic against the recently unified human and humanoid tribes of the vast Sind Desert. And these tribes are basically have been brought together in a kind of army by this mysterious figure called the Master. All right. And you have to go and basically find out who the Master is and to defeat him. And this module, which kind of starts in the desert regions and ends up in this abbey, this creepy abbey up in the mountains in the, here, let me put up a map real quick here. If I can, here we go. It's a little small, I apologize, but up here, like
Tori doesn't mind.
Yeah. Up here in the mountains and everything, you end up at this abbey where there's a terrible secret, right? And not as all is what it appears to be, and it's almost kind of Call of Cthulhu-esque. So after you cross the desert and go in the abbey, and you have to deal with that, it brings you to the second module in the series, which is the Temple of Death. And this module basically is just as the name implies, you're completing this adventure by eventually getting to the master's headquarters, his castle, right, which is almost kind of a Persian setup. In the module, it's got wonderful artwork. It's kind of old school artwork, and in the temple itself, if you can see that, is really cool. Yeah. It's got this almost kind of I don't know, like something you see like maybe in Afghanistan or maybe Pakistan. Hard to say, but it's got that kind of Middle Eastern slash Asiatic kind of feel to it. And you ultimately discover who the master is, and you fight him and you defeat him. And there's some new creatures that are introduced along the way. But let me ask you first, because I've been talking forever, but Michael, like, as far as these desert adventures go in this setting, what are some of like movies or pop culture or literature or anything that we can kind of pull from to give us an idea of how to kind of come up with adventure ideas in this setting?
Dune. There's lots of sand in there.
Dune.
Oh, okay. No, the Phantom Menace, because it takes place on Tatooine, and the sand gets everywhere. It's rough and it's coarse, and it gets no, I'm kidding.
I'll give you Dune. I'm not going to give you episode 1.
Now, you know how I write games. I like kitschy kind of 60s, 70s adventures, and I would probably go with probably I Dream of Jeannie adventure, where say her sister gets kidnapped, and she by in this world and stuff like that, and so she has to go, but it's a trap because she would be OP because she's Jeannie. So she takes like Dr. Bellows and the General and Major Healy, and of course, and they go there, but their powers are affected. So Dr. Bellows would be like the cleric, and the General, I can't remember his last name for some reason, but he would be like the fighter, and I think Major Nelson's would probably be a paladin because he's kind of good, and Healy would definitely be like the rogue, the thief, and so that's how I would play that adventure, where and then they have to rescue her sister and stuff like that, and of course Jeannie. Whoop, I almost knocked over my mic. Jeannie would be the magic user, obviously. So I mean that's how I would do it, because that would be fun, and then people could be geared for it, because almost everyone at a certain age has seen I Dream of Jeannie, and so that's the hook to get them into this fantastical desert land. How about you? What would you do?
I mean, obviously,
or the facts of life.
This pulls from Lawrence of Arabia, right? I mean, obviously, modules X4 and X5 kind of tie into Lawrence of Arabia.
But how would you do it though? I mean, because how would they? Would they actually be bringing their weapons and guns and grenades and weaponry into that? I mean,
no. I wouldn't. I wouldn't do like modern Lawrence.
But can you
going
imagine
into the desert, right? I'm just talking about the actual what's inspired.
Oh, I don't know. I'm not to disagree. Could you imagine Lawrence of Arabia? They have all the weaponry and stuff like that, but now they have to face like monsters and magic and all this other stuff. Well, that could be fun.
You could do something kind of cool, like Lawrence. He's assembled the Bedouin tribes. They're having some success against the Turks, but they find a lost temple, right? And then there's some gateway into another world, and then they end up, in the desert and the Emirates,
with carbon rifles and stuff like that. And that's how I would do it, because that would be kind of you juxtapose both of those cultures. And like I said, the one side has never seen weaponry like that before, and the other side hasn't seen magic and monsters like that. This is like all like what was it, the book, the Arabian Nights books,
right?
It's like
that obviously ties into this too, right? The Thousand Nights.
And you have like gin and stuff in there, and so that would be a kind of a fun thing. I would almost do it that way. because most people are familiar with Lawrence of Arabia, and or at least the setting and
Oh
what's going
yeah.
on.
Speaking of gin, and this is kind of off topic, but I got to mention it.
Hogan?
It's no, there was a horror, and
Yes.
I'll just have to tell the audience because it's like the best horror movie ever about gin, right? Like these
Oh yeah,
evil
I haven't seen it.
spirits. And it's a movie called Under the Shadow, and it's an Iranian horror movie, and it's like this thing is terrifying, right?
I did see it. You told me, and I
Oh,
watched it.
and
Yeah,
it's
it's
just
good.
it gave me so many great D&D ideas, right? Like how cool a monster and how terrifying and just weird it could be, right? I love those movies, but yeah, I mean, other possibilities, The Mummy, right? Kind of, with
Sure.
the movies, the Mummy movies, right? With Brendan Fraser and all that. I mean, that kind of works here. Although I think this setting is obviously less Egyptian and more Arabian and Persian,
Sure.
right? Than that. But it's that still works.
How about
Uh,
like like a Jason and the Argonauts type deal? Is that too? That is more Greek, I
that's
think.
more Greek. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Although I don't know if did they kind of travel into the kind of
I mean, they fought a lot of
Asiatic land?
things.
I don't remember, but I think they were mostly in the islands in the
Okay.
Mediterranean.
I'm trying to think what else there would be for that. I mean, there has to be tons of desert films. You know,
Oh yeah. Yeah.
like Tremors. Tremors takes place in a desert like thing.
Yeah.
But I think Lawrence of Arabia would be a really good setting. Now they might not even get transported to that place. How if they open a portal and they come into this into our world, our 20th century world, and everything like that,
Sure.
and they have to fight them back and close the portal, or more worse things are going to be coming through. And
Yeah, yeah, you could do something like that. And
yeah,
so when I was looking at all this, I actually, well, we created um
oh yeah,
basically
there
some
you are.
original content for this, right? So I looked over the Emirates of Ylaruam Gazetteer, and I looked through the modules X4, X5, and some other things. I also looked at the rule encyclopedia and basically wrote a small adventure, probably about maybe 6 hours to get through, that can be run at a convention game that directly ties into all of this stuff, right? I called it the Lost Tomb of Abdul Al-Uzzah. In some of the things really I do here, I'm not going to say too much because I don't want to be a spoiler. But basically, you are uh, sent on a mission to confirm the lineage, the family lineage of a leader who is basically claiming to have both political and religious authority over the Emirates, almost like a caliphate or a caliph in this case. And his reign is being contested because people are basically saying that he isn't who he is saying he is, right? That he doesn't have this family lineage, that he's not descended from Al-Khalim, right, the prophet. So you are sent off into the Sin desert, into the valley of death, and to this tomb where there are these basically the truth can be found, right? These ancient scrolls or inscriptions. But some of the things I did is I looked through the Gazetteer, and I have at one point, not to reveal too much, but I thought it was kind of cool, where the party encounters basically a remote desert tribe. They're almost kind of like Bedouin, and there are people within the tribe, specifically this one young woman, who are the navigators of the dunes. Right, they're able to like basically lead travelers through the dunes because the desert is so alien and inhospitable, and there's no landmarks or anything. You can't find your way through it, and you die. So they have to convince this tribe and this woman to help them. And one way they do it is by using these rules that are in the Gazetteer called the storytelling rules, where the characters can actually over a meal, like a banquet, basically tell these epic poetic tales. And if they can delight the tribe and the leader of the tribe enough, right, they'll be granted the guide and the girl that will guide them through the tombs. So that's an example of using some of the things that are inside the Gazetteer along with all the survival rules.
Right. No, it sounds great. Now, this adventure is available for free download at our Facebook
It is.
fans of the DGS. So,
Right.
if
So you
anyone's
can pull this
interested,
down as a PDF, right? And then there's, at the very end, you have to basically fight or confront a truly terrible foe, right? It's very, very dangerous. But the last thing I'll say about it is this module serves as a direct precursor to X4. So this ties right into that.
okay,
Because
neat.
I'm giving people an idea of who the master really is and where he comes from. All right.
So, if they were going to play these modules, they could start with yours to ease them into that world, and then go on to X4 and X5. That'd be really groovy.
Yeah, it's basically a prequel, and then some pre-gens and stuff here. So yeah, so I mean that's just an example of some original content, and we'll have other things forthcoming, larger, more elaborate modules that tie into some of this stuff, including the Gazetteers. I'm not done with those yet. I want to do one for the Shadow Elves. I think the Shadow Elves are really cool, so I want to write an adventure for that. And again, I mean, this stuff that I do that ties into the old TSR, it's all going to be free, right? This is just fan created material, so I'm not selling it. This.
And you have this is your first one, and you have another one on fans of the DGS on Facebook, right?
I do. I have one for Hercules and Xena.
Ah, nice.
I have a module.
Well, we'll have to have a Hercules and Xena show.
Yeah, we will. That's a fun system too, and I'm working on a third one right now that ties into the Master series of the BECMI sets.
Oh, okay.
Called the Terror of Alphax. So yeah, but again, I won't go too much on more about this, but this is a fun setting. These Gazetteers I really think are some of the best things that TSR ever produced. There are other YouTube videos about these which go into like a lot of depth. I mean, I think there's a guy named BECMI Warrior. He's got a YouTube channel that's really good because it gets really down and deep into these TSR products. I mean, he just goes through everything, and it's really cool. So maybe I'll put a link down below for that, so you can check his stuff out. But yeah, so that's some ideas for a desert adventure, kind of Lawrence of Arabia, I Dream a Genie, kind of possibility for our gaming buddies out there.
Yeah, I mean, I'll probably write the I Dream a Genie one because it sounds like it would be fun to do. With I mean, like I said, I love all that TV stuff, and I can't get banned for this one, unlike my top secret Operation Thorny Crown. I'm doing that adventure one day.
That's for a later episode. We'll talk about that.
Yeah, we'll talk about some adventures we've written that now that things are changing in the world, I might be able to run.
Yeah.
And and my porno adventure too. Because
I
did get away with Rocky Horror, but that was before the woke times. A little bit before. It's like on the verge of it. So I can't get canceled. I mean, what are they going to do to me? Nothing. They can't do nothing.
You were born canceled.
Yes, I was. You and my mother says the same thing. I don't know what she means by it, but I know what you mean by it.
Right.
So,
all right, Michael.
Any plans for our next show? What do you think we're doing? Are we doing the topless show? The full Monte show?
I do want to do a necroscope show.
Ah, yes.
Yeah. So I'm trying to put that one together. I mean, there's some other stuff I want to put together. But that one's coming up because I'm could probably run that at a couple of conventions. So I want to get formally.
Yeah, I can't wait for the necroscope thing because of course I've read all the books and I know you've been reading them and you've already read that game. I have, yeah. Yeah, you have read that game. It was very, very well received.
Yeah, I ran it at Game Hole. It's like 6 hours long. It's a big adventure. So
I can only do 4 hours. It's like I have to take naps in between. But I'm too busy running games to actually playing games. I mean, I was going through one of the old programs. I remember at one of the Gary Cons, before we got canceled from Gary Con, I ran 6 adventures, like full length ones, full costumes,
crazy.
full everything.
Back when we were young, we could do that.
Oh man, but I was so much younger. I was like in my late teens at the time. A couple of years ago. But yeah, and I was just like, oh my god, I wish I had that energy nowadays. Maybe I still have. I did 4 at Gamehole, so that was pretty good. Full costumes too. So I mean, full Kiss makeup and Bowie costumes and all that stuff. Oh my god, I'm getting too old for this stuff. Getting too old.
We need to do a Bowie episode. So
I'm doing. Oh yeah. Well, what I like to do.
Maybe that one will be next. I don't know because that was pretty fun.
What we can do a we can do TV adventures, because I got a bunch of those, and I know you have some too. And there's some that that you're going to do. They should be done because they're awesome.
Well,
the good
let's not reveal too much right now. Let's not bore our audience.
I don't hide anything, man. I don't hide anything except for the bodies.
We'll just tell the audience to stay tuned because we're coming back with some other stuff very shortly here. But
4 or 5 years or so.
Yeah, true. So
well, hopefully sooner than that. All right.
Mike.
Thank you, Colin. It's been great. Hopefully everyone out there in TV land, computer land, enjoyed what we're doing, and we're going to keep on doing it regardless of what you think. And don't forget to download Colin's modules on the fans of the DGS on Facebook. That'd be great.
Cool. All right, dude.
All right. Talk to you later.
I'll see you.
All right. Bye-bye.